Good music.
Very fun. Hello, hello.
Oh,
How are we doing? Hello, Brittany. Sorora, I know you've told me how to say your name before. My apologies if I said it wrong. Hello. Hi, great to see
Hi, hello, Soraya. It is
Soraya.
a little
you.
difficult.
Soraya.
Soraya, yes.
Yes,
Nice.
well, hello.
How are you today?
I am good. It's good to see you again.
Me too. And it's so busy week for all of us coaches. Happy,
Yes.
happy coaching weeks.
Yes, ICF Coaching Week. This is day 2 of our free events. And so I hope everybody joining was able to join us for our first one. But if not, this is sure to be a really great one also. Super excited to get started. Go ahead and drop in the chat. Where are you calling in from? And introduce yourself.
Yeah, I would love to know a little bit about you. Whatever you want to say about yourself. Some fun facts.
Hello, Priya. Is it Priya from Dubai? Hello, I remember seeing you on our meeting on Monday. Thank you for coming back. Brittany,
Hello.
Missoula, Montana. Fun fact that ICF chapter, High Country chapter, actually spans 7 official states, and then several of us that are on the board are from other states. So that would be me in Eastern Oregon and a couple people from Nevada.
Wow.
So we're excited to have people from Dubai and other countries. We had people from everywhere across the globe on Monday. So that was very exciting.
No, I love
We love having you here.
Priya. New to coaching and love being amongst the pros. Oh, this is great.
Very good. Okay, lots of people coming in. Those of you who are just coming in, introduce yourself, where you're calling in from, maybe some tidbits that we wouldn't know from you.
Fact.
A little fun fact. My fun fact is that I love potatoes. It's true. One time when I was a kid, I ate potatoes for a whole week just to win a bet with my dad. And I still love them.
I love them too. Jen, before the whole group comes in, can I ask a very personal question?
Yes.
I'm loving your hair and I'm just beginning to start embracing my gray. Is there a quick process to this?
No, I just go find a good colorist and just go as often as you need it. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the main thing, is just to find a good colorist that keeps it the color you like. Yeah. And I am loving that there's Renata on the call, because I have a sister named Renata and very rarely do you see that name. So hello, Renata.
Hello, sorry that I'm out of camera, unfortunately multitasking, but yeah, Brazilian, I don't know, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah, no, I think my sister is more from the German roots of the Renata.
Yeah.
I know there's some Italian that's also Renata.
Yeah, Poland, I know that there is some in Poland, and sometimes they confuse me with Renate, something like that as well, yeah.
There's sometimes an E at the end. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Welcome, Mariana and Scott, and a few other people just joining us. Make sure that you just drop in the chat where you're calling in from. And one interesting tidbit, you might have missed mine already. It was my love for potatoes. So lots of Utah in the house. Fun.
So just like any tidbit about ourselves?
Yes.
Like anything? Oh.
Anything. What do you got for us, Mariana?
I love Halloween. It's my favorite holiday.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah,
My
not the
daughter-in-law
not the gory, bloody, gross stuff, but like the spooky and the eerie, right? I've loved it since I was a kid. And my parents are from Poland, so they do not celebrate Halloween in Poland. So they were like, where did she get this from? So
very fun.
a
Very
fun
fun.
tidbit.
Hello, Chris and Amber.
I eat chocolate every day.
Oh, that's fun. Love it. Okay.
Hi, I'm Katie, and I live in Idaho. I love potatoes too.
You would have thought I lived there.
I love stargazing. So my son gets up at 4:30 in the morning, and I'm an early riser too. So we were out with the Big Dipper this morning. So that's a little tidbit.
And the Northern Lights?
Yes. Did you see those?
I told my husband, I'm like, I'm 99% sure I saw them or I made it up. It really, we didn't have the color where I was at, but I could see the pattern.
Were you looking through your camera?
No.
The color didn't show up until you looked through your camera.
Oh.
Yes.
Well,
a friend of mine happened to tell me that. And then when I went to take a picture to just see, I was like, it is out. But at first it just looked really swishy. And then I got a bunch of really cool pictures.
Oh,
I know they really need training before big events like that. Who knew?
Yeah, no, I normally don't bring my phone when I go outside. So that's next time. Thank you.
Yes, yes. Well, thankfully we have social media and everybody like shared a ton all across the world, really, of the pictures and the sightings. So that was exciting. All right. Well, we are 5 after the hour. Oh, a few more people coming in here. We're loving getting to know you and connecting with you today. We have our special speaker here, Jen Marr, who's already been engaging with us. We would expect nothing less. She is my friend, the author of Showing Up, and I will be pushing her book because I have it here. This is what it looks like. We'll share it in the chat. A comprehensive guide to comfort and connection. And she is pioneering how we can care for each other better in our workplaces. So I'm really excited to share her and her work with you today as our little special event. So with that, Jen, I will turn it over to you.
Yes. Well, you know, before I get started, as everybody may or may not know, outside of it being Coaching Week, which is so exciting, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And really, I think it's kind of why I'm also here. Mental Health Awareness Month is a big deal now in the workplace. It wasn't maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago or any time before that. And so I'm going to be talking a little bit about that and how that infiltrates into the workplace and how we really look at human hardships in the workplace. You can look about it as struggles, challenges, suffering, hardships, discontent, untethering, whatever you want to call it. But there's a lot of just burnout, exhaustion, unsettledness, uncertainty, anxiety, depression, you name it, in the workplaces today. And so before we get started, it's always helpful for me to get a better handle on who I'm talking to and what you bring into this conversation, so I can make it most relatable to you. And so I've got some questions. If you want to raise your hand and share the answer, or write it in the chat, either way, I want to just ask a few questions. So Becky, let's start with our first one. I think, you know, I would be interested to know what industries are each of you most focused on? And if somebody wants to raise your hand and talk about it or put it in the chat, really like to get a handle on what industries you're all working with right now. So we have a tech, finance, and professional services. Becky is VP directors. Okay, mental health wellness, excellent. Amber is also a therapist, excellent, good, Amber. Federal services, VA, ADHD coaching, wonderful. Creative entrepreneurs, educational leadership. Okay, Alex, that's a big one these days. Between education and healthcare, those are two very, very hit industries with COVID. Yeah, okay, wow, family planning, wonderful. Okay, 21st year in higher ed, excellent. Yeah, colleges too. Food business, wonderful. Creative entrepreneurs, Hannah, that's cool. I love that. All right, well, that's really helpful. And, I think I would like at least one raised hand here because I'd love to hear someone answer this in person, but also in the chat. Becky, if you could put in the next question. What would you say this year, 2024, are your three biggest things you're solving for this year in your coaching practice? All those different people you're working with, if you were to round it up and say, wow, these are the three challenges that people are really facing this year. Would anybody want to raise your hand and talk about it? Put some in the chat. Would really love to know. Yeah, Giovanna.
Sorry, I'm recovering from COVID, so my
Oh,
voice
no.
is but that's one of our big challenges in higher ed. People just are continually cycling through long-term illnesses. Like this is my second time with COVID. I've been vaccinated so many times. And so, it's just something that a lot of our students are feeling. And the health issues, it's not just physical health, it's mental health. This school year we had our just a bunch of kids who like had significant time in their school experience as COVID kids. And that's really changed the face of higher ed. It's changed how they interact to each other. Um, so, like health is a big issue. Interacting with other people is a huge issue for our college student population, and I think younger student population as well. Um, and then for a lot of our students, I am seeing so many students who have misdiagnoses, and like I don't diagnose, but just talking to them, I am continually referring them to doctors and therapists and centers for ADHD testing, other learning disabilities. So there's a lot of that going on where they know something's wrong and just no one has said, yeah, there is something wrong. Why don't you look into it by doing this? So those are the big things I'm working with.
Thank you. Yeah, that plays into what we'll be talking about today. So I really appreciate that. Scott says executive burnout, sustainable balance lead. Yep, this is all stuff. Increased communication, connection with others, overwhelm. That's such a big word right now, right? Everybody's it's the pile-on effect. Empowering and coaching business. Oh, congratulations, Soraya, writing your first book. That's excellent. Well, that's good. And I think what we're kind of seeing this theme here, what is this lack of connection, uncertainty, stress, burnout. And, let's put the next question in. So when you think this is Mental Health Awareness Month and mental health in the workplace, what do you consider to be the biggest impacts in your coaching that you can make? So just to reframe this question a little. So the question is, when you think of Mental Health Awareness Month and mental health in the workplace, what do you consider to be the biggest impacts in your coaching when it comes to that? Are you seeing all of a sudden a lot of new requests? Is this coming up that didn't used to come up? Anyone willing to raise your hand and talk about it? Amber, I know you're a therapist. I would love your take on what you're seeing if you're willing to share.
Sure. I think that it's a big part of the reason why I went into coaching was seeing a lot of my clients struggles at work, or struggles with psychological safety and being able to assert their needs, take care of themselves even after work, just from being exhausted or so not feeling safe or so much anxiety or depression, at play. So definitely not being able to show up as their best self, in the work environment and then in turn at home with their own well-being or with their families or their loved ones.
Yeah, well said. I think that sums up a lot of it. And what about anybody have any impacts with their coaching with people wanting to be a better leader with leading people with mental health? That is also, I think, improving the emotional leaders. This has the biggest impact. Yeah, Scott, very good. Changing the mindset and more mind fitness and mindfulness. Yeah, really being able to look inward and understand what's going on within ourselves is such a big thing. Okay, the next question I would have is, what circumstances have you personally witnessed, experienced, or coached through where mental health has played a factor? Anybody have a story to share or any specific instance? I know Giovanna, you put out some ones there on the college campus, which is so true. But anybody recalling a situation or dealing with a situation specific that mental health is a factor that you'd be willing to share?
Oh,
Mariana.
Alex, go ahead. You can go ahead, Alex.
Why don't we go Alex and then Mariana?
Thanks, Mariana. Yeah, I have a client currently that I'm working with who has just started a new role in a new educational institution and left her former role after almost 20 years for what she's like now realized. So she's feeling like very unsafe. And so she kind of is not kind of, she's very much experiencing like PTSD in feeling safe, asserting her needs, communicating comfortably or confidently in her role, and really like settling in. And we've done a lot of like somatic work, and she's very like self-aware. She's very engaged in the yoga world, but she's realizing how this past experience is showing up, in the way she was treated in her former workplace, in her new workplace. It's quite confusing. It's quite challenging. Even though the people are different and they're actually treating her quite nicely, the physical and emotional responses are very much rooted in a period of the past. So it's definitely impacting her in a multitude of ways.
Yeah, there you go. These kinds of things are happening all around, right? Alex, thank you for sharing that. And Mariana, what's your experience?
Yeah, I would say, so I used to work with Giovanna, with Joey at UVU in higher ed as well. So I worked with that same student population, but even moving into my private ADHD coaching practice with ADHD, I would say the majority of my clients have a co-occurring or coexisting mental health condition along with the ADHD. And so there's always that fine line of, making sure that certain things stay in the therapy realm versus the coaching realm. And also kind of being able to extract like what's an executive functioning challenge versus is this the depression or the anxiety impacting that, and so yeah, I feel like in the world of ADHD coaching, there's always a link to the mental health piece.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks,
Joey. And, you just see how things are not said in the workplace, but they'll come and they'll talk to you about it, right? There's so many hidden struggles out there in the workplace. So my last question before I get started is give this some thought and write it out. What has changed in our world that makes mental health awareness so critical today? What's kind of at the foundation of all of this stress and angst and burnout and anxiety? Would love your thoughts. I'll get into it a little more, but I would love your thoughts on it. Anybody want to share their hand and talk about it? Raise your hand and talk about it. You're willing, you can do that too. Global world.
I agree with Alex in terms of the complexity of the global world and the globalization and interconnection that we do have. It's a double-edged sword when it comes to things like social media. We're so connected and yet we're so disconnected. So
Your worries, pace of life, social media. Wait for a few more to come in. Any other thoughts out there? anger, depression, and wars. Yeah. Just puts those
And
negative.
Jen, I would say that, you know, new studies are coming out. Like we didn't do reports on this as much, I don't think. And now we're realizing that we're in a global pandemic of loneliness. As connected as we are, how are we disconnected? And how do we get past that to be able to really connect authentically? And there's a shift in leadership that says that happened, and we could probably debate when it happened, but the shift was that it went from top-down leadership to collaborative leadership to really engaging the whole person. So in leadership, we no longer just say, hey, you're just here to do a job. Like, I need to care about you. I need to invest in you personally and get to know you and really make sure that you're in the right seat on the bus and concerned with you, because it's not that we can live these disjointed lives where we just go to work and leave our family at home and then come home and leave our work at home. Like, I don't think anybody, at least none of the people that I work with, when we talk about work-life balance, are experiencing that at all. They have to figure out how to balance it all. And where's the flexibility to be able to manage everything that we have on our plates?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's very well said, Becky. Everything has changed, right? Let's see, one of the many changes, threats are more mental. Mm-hmm. What to do with, yep. Very well said. I think there is so much of this that's going on. And so in the realm of all of these different things being put out there to support mental health, to fix mental health, to take care of our mental health, what does that look like in the workplace? And so I just want to introduce myself a little bit for those of you that don't know me. My background was all in international business development for the majority of my career up until about 15 years ago. I lived overseas. I worked for a global healthcare company. I worked on bringing together cohesion in our European subsidiaries. And everything I had ever done in life was started with a blank piece of paper. So I'm very much an entrepreneur. But because I was this international person that spent so much time on the road, I needed to take a career break when my third daughter was born. I couldn't keep up the travel anymore. And so I decided to take that break and ended up being approximately just 9 minutes away from Sandy Hook Elementary when that tragic shooting happened in 2012. And because of some of the work that I was working in the volunteer space, I ended up going into that school and being a support mechanism for them for 5 years. So I spent time weekly in Sandy Hook Elementary, really understanding what support worked best for them. But 4 months after Sandy Hook Elementary, I don't know if y'all remember, but one of the things I was doing to kind of process everything I was working through at Sandy Hook was I was training to run the Boston Marathon as a charity runner. I would have never, ever been qualified to run it on my own, but and so I was training for that marathon and processing everything that was going on. I dedicated mile 26 to all my new friends and teachers because we lost 26 lives at Sandy Hook. And I was 0.2 miles away from that 26-mile marker when I was stopped because the bombs went off. And it took me 2 hours to find my family. It was all quite traumatic. When you're stopped after running 25.8 miles, your body kind of goes into shock. Plus thrown into a situation where we didn't know if there were more bombs going off. And I mean, it was really quite chaotic and traumatic. And throughout those two major events happening so back to back in my background in business development over the next couple of years, I just noticed how we as a human race have gotten really bad at supporting people that are suffering, and how I would go into the school every week and people would say, nobody even knows how to talk to me. And I go into the supermarket and people go down to the next aisle and people have stopped calling me. And this was against a backdrop of a world that cared deeply. There wasn't a person in the world that didn't care about that school. But yet this was a group that felt very highly unseen and uncared for and unsupported. And mental health counseling and self-care did nothing for them. They needed human connection. And so I was really drawn to figure out what more could be done, because I saw here where all of these, interventions in behavioral programs that would come in to try to support them, and it didn't have the desired effect. And it set me off on this 10-year journey of researching human care and connection and comfort and support, and what is stopping us, where we have this situation where people care deeply, but yet those that are struggling feel very unseen. So I started to start programs and have on our 4th research study now, working with the New York Office of Mental Health, worked with Northeastern University. I'm currently working with the Harvard Flourishing at Work program to really dive into behaviors, mindsets, and habits that stop us from showing people that we care, which is really at the root of our disconnection and our loneliness epidemic happening in our world today. And so with that, what I can do is I will, if you give me a minute, I'll share my screen and I'll just talk through some slides. I don't want to share a lot of slides, but I'll share a few from what we're finding out in the workplace today. Just give me 1 second. All right, I guess I can do it this way. So yeah, we kind of put it in as showing up, which is another form of connection. How do we show up for each other? We could also say, how do we show up for ourselves? But I want to be very clear that what we're talking today about is not inward looking. That's a lot of what we focus on with mindfulness meditation, understanding our emotions, our emotional intelligence. That's all looking inward. And sometimes when we're looking so inward all the time, it becomes awkward to look outward. And so what we're going to focus on today is acting outward. And I think the very first thing that we should consider when we look at that is just the underlying assumption that is so prevalent in our world today. And that is everyone you know has a battle you don't know about. I just don't think this could be more true than it is today. And, underscoring all of that is our current Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy. I'm not sure if you're all aware of this, but, you think back in the day when the Surgeon General put the warning on the cigarettes, right? Like cause cancer. And, the job of a Surgeon General is to pick the most current public health crisis. And our current U.S. Surgeon General has identified workplace well-being as his strategic priority. And to be clear on that, it's workplace well-being as a we, not a me. So again, it's outward looking organizationally as an organization, not just putting it on the employee to go get therapy, coaching, and self-care. So what we're really going to be looking at here is the organizational responsibility to create cultures where people feel cared for and supported. What our Surgeon General will point out is that 76% of workers reporting at least one symptom of a mental health condition. And 84% of these people said that their workplace had contributed to at least one of those. So there we go. Also, 81% of workers reported that mental health is going to be a factor in where they determine where they want to work. So what we do when we train, and the reason I met Becky is she was looking to potentially become one of our certified trainers. But when we go out, we basically survey all of our workplaces with an anonymous pre-survey. And we ask a lot of questions to kind of get a culture read of that organization. And when we look at our aggregated data for 2023, this is what we can see. That high levels of burnout and exhaustion, you guys have all said that. Over half, some workplaces we were down as low at 42%, other workplaces we've worked with as high as 65% of challenged by anxiety and depression. 7 in 10 feel unable to be open with others. Like that is a major, major point here that I really want you to focus on. Nearly a quarter or more, like sometimes it's been as low as 18%, it's been as high as 37% of when people walk in the door, they are not getting supported outside of work. This is a very new phenomenon that we cannot assume anymore that people just walk into work feeling all jolly and their bucket being filled. But here's the kicker. Like it used to be work was work, home was home, and I'll just get my bucket filled at home and I'll come home and to work and the two don't meet. And it would be one thing if all these things were happening and people said, I just want to keep my home life separate. I want to keep my work life separate. I don't want to talk about either of them at work. 3 and 4 wish they could be more open with others. Like that is a very, very high percentage. And I think that that is something that's so critical to understand. So there's a lot of words on the screen, but I'll just kind of walk you through it. If we start over on the left, so what are the 5 key trends in leadership that the vast majority of workers are struggling with burnout, exhaustion, and mental health? It has a staggering impact on work performance. These are tied directly to employee engagement and turnover. We know that. The emergence of AI is confusing the situation. You guys all know it, you feel it. And Gen Z is changing its values. I have a daughter that's a senior in college, and she is of that guinea pig generation, the first one to get a smartphone in her hand. I have 2 older daughters that didn't have that smartphone in their formative years, and it's a palpable difference. This generation in college right now, Marianne, as you pointed out, are completely different human. When we think of, we are either native analog or we are native digital. And if we are native analog, we do not understand native digital. And so there are these generational differences that are converging in the workplace, that if we've got the native analog people telling the native digital people to be, hey, this is how I did it when I was your age and just suck it up and get it done, we will have disjointed, dysfunctional workplaces. We've got to open up our eyes to how different people are now. And, you know, research will show too that when it comes to mental health, it is the leader that has the biggest impact on their mental health, equal to spouse and partner. It's at about 70%. So that's basically what's happening. So what we're going to learn with our workplace data, I'll kind of go through next. And that is when we survey people, first of all, number one, people will say at a very high rate, I can see people when they struggle. And that's true. So we have people that consider themselves very empathic and compassionate. And so one of the things I want to just point out here, that emotional intelligence is super awesome. But it's the first step when we come to this. We can't stop at emotional intelligence, because if we just stop at saying be empathic and be compassionate, we aren't going deep enough, because 80 to 95% of people, or 85 to 98% of people will say, hey, I'm a compassionate person. I can see human suffering. When we flip that and say, where do you feel least cared for in the workplace? A very high percentage, 80-some%, no one sees me. So I can see you, but no one sees me, right? We go further. Do you let people know about what you're struggling with? No, I really don't let people know. But do you wish you could? Yes, I could. So that 4th point there is super important. Like, it's not, some people are well-adjusted. They really just want to come and do their work, not deal with that kind of stuff. But when you've got 76% of people that want to be more open in the workplace about what they're struggling with, it's something that has to be tackled. And the gap remains because leaders currently have very low confidence in navigating those conversations when it comes to mental health. And so really that is the angle I'm taking today. And it is this gap that we have out there where we have people that care. We are a compassionate species. And so when you see out there, like, empathy is the #1 leadership skill, it's a good start. But I want you to come away from this understanding that all of this goes so much deeper than emotional intelligence. We have to have the hardcore skills. We have to know what to do regardless of how we feel. It should not be up to our emotions to guide our actions when people are suffering with mental health. And that is one point that I want to make very clear today. I'm all for emotional intelligence. It's great, but we have to go beyond that to social and relational intelligence to tackle this in the workplace.
Hey, Jen,
yeah.
Question. In the chat, Scott asked, what was the 70% about leader impact? And then 70% of people say as important as a spouse. Is that their employer?
Oh, right. That was a UKG study. And I apologize, when I'm in presenter mode, I can't see the chat. So Becky, you're just going to need to jump in. It's a UKG study out of a global study that basically asked people who has the biggest impact on your mental health. And to them, it was their manager or boss or leader. So that came in at roughly 70%. Their physician was 50%, their therapist was 40%. So there's a great Forbes article I can send you on that. I can send you the study on that if you're interested. But very, very safe. Okay, so let's go through what is mental health wellness. And I think, you know, Amber's a counselor here. We've got people dealing with college students. We've got people that are focused on mindfulness, and all of those things need to come together into a framework that we know what is the role of each and every person when it comes to our mental wellness. So like Amber and other people that are trained counselors and therapists, our clinical care is incredibly important. And what I'd like you to do when you're looking at this, and I'd like you to consider a barbell, or if you go to the gym, a dumbbell, right? And so, you know, 2 heavy weights on either end, and you have a bar in the middle that you need to hold. So one of those heavy weights is our clinical care, our clinicians, our therapists, our counselors, super important, trained therapists in our brain health. On the other side of that is our self-care. And our self-care, I would put as anything that we have to do looking internally to make ourselves better, all right? That could be emotional intelligence, understanding our emotions, practicing breathing techniques, practicing mindfulness, practicing anything, good eating habits, good sleeping habits, all of those things that is our inner work that we need to become more self-aware of what we can do ourselves to make ourselves more mentally well, all right? But I want you to consider both of these right now. And I want you to consider if those are the 2 areas that we have, and quite honestly, this is sometimes how it goes. Hey, I am very emotionally aware. I am aware of my emotions. I know how to act on them. I can practice my breathing techniques. If I get stressed, I'll go take a bath. I'll go for a walk. I know I can do my adult coloring. I'm going to do all these things. I can manage all of that. And if I really have trouble, I'll go see a therapist. And for a lot of people, that's kind of how it works. And I want you to think about what's missing in that. And what's missing in that is this scenario. If you were to break an ankle or have some sort of medical condition where you had clinical care with the doctor doing your surgery or casting your ankle, and then he would say, go home and make sure you do your therapy sessions and take care of that ankle and get enough sleep and elevate it and do all that. And that was the end of it. You would be lonely, you would be isolated, because what we have to take into account in the workplace is our supportive care. And that is what we're going to be talking about showing up. That is the boss, that's the leader, that's the friend, that's the parent, that's the coworker, that is a stranger that says, hey, you're not in this alone, I've got your back. I'm going to see you through this. We're going to support you through it. You are not alone. I'm with you. And that support is not clinical care, and it is not self-care. They are very, very, very different. And I want you to think about this. If you are someone that is struggling with burnout, and if you are someone that is a high-functioning anxiety person, and this is what you have, you're basically being saying, all right, I'm going to go see a therapist. That's going to cost me money. I've got to schedule that. I've got to schedule, I've got to make time for mindfulness. I've got to make time for meditation. I've got to do all these things. Everything is up to the one struggling to manage, to pay for, and to schedule without any help. It's all on them. And this is where the workplaces are starting to push back. This is where workplaces, you know, employees are saying, enough, what's your role in this? Mr. Leader, what's your role? Don't put this all on my back. And so that's what we're talking about here. So I just want to be really clear on that. And I also want to point out why I want to be clear on that. There's a great new study out of Oxford that basically looked at 46,000 people in 233 organizations. And they wanted to say, hey, this self-care right here, this one, self-care, if we look at that, how much better are our workplaces? Do we have a better sense of well-being if we focus on individually led practices, such as mindfulness, resilience, stress management, relaxation classes, well-being apps? 46,000 people in 233 organizations found that there was no better result if you put it all on the employee. So take that to heart, guys. This is a massive study. And they're basically saying it's not just up to the worker, it's up to the workplace. And there's got to be a management role in this. There's got to be a culture involved in this. Instead of throwing it all on the worker that says, hey, go see a therapist and here's a Calm app too, and go get a coach. So it can't all be on the one struggling, and the leader sits there and say, hey, go do your thing and come back when you're better. So the leader has got to have a role in this, and that's what we're talking about. And even the Surgeon General, if you've looked at his new workplace wellness framework, everything in here is a we. It does not put it at all on the employee. It is all up to the organization and leadership to create frameworks to support the employee through their hardship, not put it all on them with the two ends of the barbell to deal with themselves. So what are we solving for then? This is our aggregated data, 90%. Hey, I can see you. I'm empathic. You don't need to teach me empathy. I got that covered. I'm empathic. But you know what? No one sees me. So, but I really wish I could be more open with people. This is the challenge of our times. So what has changed? I asked you that question, and you guys all talked about global events and this and that. And I'm going to pinpoint it back to one very major change. And I know some of you have said that. You said social media, but really what it boils down to is our handheld devices. And I want you to think for a second, can you even think about what life was like before we had screens in our hand? Can you think about it? And I want you to think for a second on each of these areas. We'll just look at the upper right-hand corner. Those students on the way to school, what would they have to be doing right now if they didn't have a screen in their hands? They would need to be, I'm sorry, I can't see the chat. So Becky, you might want to chime in, but nobody likes awkward silence, right? Mm-hmm. So prior to handheld technology, we would be forced to have awkward conversations. We would be forced to be very aware of the people around us, right? We would be forced to make stupid small talk, like, hey, what class are you going to? Who's your professor? Like, oh, I heard he was bad, or what's going on? Like, all of those millions and millions of daily awkward conversations have been gone. They're just gone. We don't have them anymore. Our human relational behaviors are out the window because what happens? We go straight to our phone. Any single time we have extra time, it is straight to our phone. And what happens when we go to your phone? Tell me this doesn't happen to you. I'm going to go to send a text and I see, oh, I got a notification. My mom is there. Oh my gosh, like, okay, mom, what's up? And then I'm doing, oh, wow, I've got that appointment coming up. And, oh, geez, what did I go to my phone for in the first place, right? You've got all these notifications popping up. And there's study after study that's showing it is rewiring our brains. Mm-hmm. Because Becky, watch the chat. And what do you guys think our average attention span is right now?
Well, the chat that was coming in is talking to each other, talking and socializing, connecting with each other. And then Chris mentioned, my 10-year-old fourth grader really wants a cell phone. Most of his friends have them.
Mm. Yeah.
The attention span that's coming in, 6 seconds, 7 seconds, question mark, 3 seconds, 5 seconds.
It's 8 seconds. I probably will get down to 3 pretty soon, but 8 seconds. And so, we can trace back a lot of our mental health challenges to the advent of screens, not only screens, handheld screens and smartphones, that we're doing everything on our screens and we are just not connecting with each other. And that's really at the core of a lot of our loneliness. And I think if you remember, my first book came out I wrote it in 2017 and 2018, and I was already starting to look at this research. There's a great researcher out by the name of Jean Twenge and also Jonathan Haidt. They put this new book out, The Anxious Generation, which is incredible with a lot of data that backs all of this up. But on top of that, then, even before all of this was, or after all this was done, we had COVID, which isolated us even more. And that social isolation, on top of, you mentioned long-term illnesses. Giovanna, I think you're just, dealing with COVID again, all of these things. At that time, what our president of the American Psychological Association said at that time was the amount of social support that you have. This is how we're going to get out of COVID. And social support, guys, is the hand that holds the barbell. That is our whole relational infrastructure. And that is going to be directly related to our physical health, mental health, and generally how well we do in life. So we basically have to rebuild our social systems, our social net, our social support, our connection, the people that care for us and how we care for them back. And that becomes really difficult when our human interaction behaviors are being completely demolished by a lack of awareness of people around us, because we're just solidly always in our phones, in our own world, doing our own thing. And so we have to be aware, not saying that we're going to get rid of our phones, because that's not going to happen, but we have to recognize what that impact is and how we can offset it, right? And basically, the other study out there, and why is this? Why can't we self-care our way out of burnout? Why does that right-hand side of the barbell not take care of this and tackle loneliness? It's because it's how our bodies are wired. So when we're under stress, we've talked about PTSD and these things, and Amber and all of these other people in mental health know this. Cortisol floods through our system, and it makes us much more, our brain gets foggy. We don't sleep well. PTSD is all of that. And the hormone that overpowers that is the hormone of oxytocin. Oxytocin is that human bonding hormone. It's that person that says, you are not in this alone. I got your back. And takes that stress off. That is how our bodies are wired. There's this great researcher out of Stanford named Kelly McGonigal. It's the number 18th watched TED Talk ever. And she talks about how when we are under stress, do you ever get that feeling like you're so stressed and you're like, if I don't get this off my chest, I think I'm going to burst? It's because your body releases a little oxytocin when it releases cortisol, basically signaling you to go get connection. Like, our bodies are wired for connection. And that is why you get that urge. That is why we're feeling so lonely, because we're feeling lonely because we're not getting that connection. So that's the science behind it. And when we look at what loneliness is, it's not about being alone. My daughter's on a college campus, very, very isolated. Her freshman year was terrible, surrounded by roommates and classmates, and you name it. It was all, no one gets me. No one has any idea what I'm going through. No one knows what it's like to be me. No one listens to me. No one, I don't really feel valued. I don't feel cared for. I don't feel seen. That's what we're talking about here. And that is why we have a loneliness epidemic. So what do people want from it? We know that there's a great Boston University study that basically 87% recognizing a worsening of mental health, and 73%, they want to know how to support it. But it gets really, there's a lot of barriers out there. Like, what do I do? What's my role in this? Like, where does a mental health counselor come in? And when do I do mindfulness? And how does all this go together? It's very, very confusing. And so what we have to understand is what is in that gap. What is that gap that stops us? If everybody has empathy and compassion, and not everybody does, but I think when people are suffering, the data is well over 80% of people that will have empathy and compassion. Maybe not so much in politics, but in human suffering and struggles and challenges, people have empathy and compassion. So what stops us then? You know, I want you to consider that just because we have the right emotions of empathy and compassion, we don't always act on them the right way. Would you agree with that? We can say hurtful, we can say things that we think is right, but it was hit the wrong way, or we can do things that we think is okay, but isn't. So, you know, we have empathy, compassion, and misguided actions. We could add misguided words on there too, but let's just look at the actions. These are two of the warehouses at Sandy Hook after that tragedy, which is why one of the reasons why I have pushed back heavily against random acts of kindness, because random is a connection avoider, just by definition of its word. If we're going to do some kindness, do it person to person, please. So when we train people to do random acts of kindness, like look at any of these things. Look at those teddy bears, every single one of those teddy bears. How do the people feel that sent them? they got all excited. Hey, look, I'm sending this. I feel I did something, right? But they did something really to make themselves feel better because they had no idea how it was going to really impact, because there wasn't ever a heart-to-heart connection. And this ended up being a tremendous burden on a town that was already struggling to cope. It took years and thousands of volunteers to rebox this and find homes. And at the end, they actually had to burn a lot of it. And so it's so just wasted. So again, they all had empathy and compassion. And this trickles down to leadership, which is why I'm showing you this slide. Because just because we feel empathy, compassion, and we think we're doing something right, it's not guaranteed that that person feels seen. And that is when we call the awkward zone in. So a lot of our research over the last 10 years has really focused on the awkward zone. And what we can do is we can assess habits, mindsets, and behaviors of why it is that we will be thinking of someone or care about someone, but they leave our interaction or our sphere feeling very unseen by us. Because again, statistically, if 85, 95% of people are saying, I can see you when you struggle, and 80% are saying, I don't feel seen, we're doing something wrong, right? So when, each of us can think of someone that we know is struggling and we have not done anything for them yet. We haven't reached out, haven't sent a text, haven't sent a card. And we know that if you have talked yourself out of doing anything to them, you will fall into one of two camps. Either you will be the doubter, and the doubter is driven by fear. The doubter is, I don't want to make it worse. I don't know what to say. I'm afraid if I bring it up, it's going to upset them. It's just going to make it worse. I think I'll wait. I don't know if I'm the right person to reach out right now. So it's all like, yeah, I want to, but that's the doubter. Happens all the time. In the workplace, we have a lot of deflecting. So you're either a doubter or a deflector. A deflector is going to be, not my business to step into that. That's not my place. That's what HR is for. That's not my job. You know what? I have no time. My job is not based on this. I have my own problems. I can't take that burden on. There is a whole lot of deflecting out in the workplace right now. And that is just our mindset barriers. So those are the times we've talked ourselves out of helping. Or now let's say is now our face-to-face action barriers are the other two buckets. So if you have an interaction with someone that is struggling and you leave that interaction and that person says, they don't get what I'm going through, it will either be because you have been trying to fix it, right? You're going to jump right in and you're going to say, hey, you know what? I think if we try this, or let's do that, or this or that, or did you get this book, or did you try this? And when this happened to Bob, he did this and this and this. And the person leaves feeling very invalidated, because sometimes we just want to get the problem out and done with, and we haven't taken enough time to really understand what's happening. So fixing is a very big deal in the workplace. And then the other one is, if that person feels unseen, you will have just avoided it altogether, right? I'm not bringing up that thing. Like, you know what, we're just sticking to the agenda today. I don't have time for chit chat. I don't want to bring that up. I'm not going to open that can of worms. We're going to stick straight to the agenda and just deal with work. That's the avoider. So there you go. So we dive a lot of our training into the awkward zone. We have a full workshop on the awkward zone. People get their personal assessments. They work through scenarios. They understand what stops them. And we are trying to create those common languages in the workplace where we actually know, like, oh, I'm deflecting, I'm going to do this. That has a big part of it. When we ask workplaces, rank 5 things most important to you to feel cared for at work. Always, always. And this is against workplaces, guys, that you know this, how much they're challenged with remote, hybrid, back to office policies. There has never been once that flexibility in working hours and location has beat out leaders who care. We have got to raise up leaders who know how to show support. And I think if anything throughout this presentation, if the data is not clear to you now, like every single time, if this on a college campus, it's a professor who cares over and above a group of friends. And look at, basically wellness events way down there at the bottom, right? And a lot of times that's what companies will do. Hey, Wellness Wednesday, let's go. Come get your smoothie. And that's not doing anything. So there's so much data, so many studies out there. You know, MIT did this great culture study, and what do you need to do to get your culture right? And being a source of support for employees or on college campuses, students, is the leadership trait most closely associated with a highly rated culture. We have to know, if you're looking in the healthcare field, if any of you are in that, you know, teaching leaders to support their healthcare staff is one of the easiest and best ways to get them their retention rates up. So that's that. So we really kind of have to look at throwing out the old playbook in how we care for our employees. It didn't used to be that way. It used to be work is work, home is home. We just can't live that way anymore. It's not happening. There's too much out there. You know, I'm going to skip that slide, but just leaving you with a tidbit here. I'll give you a takeaway. And how do you have those conversations? This is one of the things we train. If you are faced with an employee that's dealing with a hardship, I want you all to remember that, again, you are not the counselor here. You are the supporter. So how do you do that? And if you can just remember, number one, pause. Remember the word pause. You can do a screenshot of this, and if you can work through these 5 letters, you will leave that employee feeling seen. I promise you that. Number one, are you emotionally available? Are you present? Are you patient? Are you just there? Are you offering advice when they didn't ask for it? So many people want to jump in with advice. And if you just clip it unless they ask you for it, that is another big thing. You is unloading. Sometimes people want to relate to that person. Oh, and if they know that I'm struggling, they'll know that life sucks together. And I know you're dealing with that, but I'm dealing with this too. And what ends up happening is it becomes kind of a competition. That other person might say, okay, you win. Yours is worse than mine. So we don't want to try to be relatable by sharing what we're struggling with in these conversations, and just stop that. Another big thing is stay with the mood. A lot of times people get uncomfortable if someone's crying or if they're really down, and they'll try to cheer them up, which is exactly what you don't want to do. Right? And my screen just go totally fuzzy. That is so funny. I don't know why it did that. I apologize. Anyway, I'm still here. As soon as I stop sharing my screen, I'll go on fuzzy. But, oh, wait, I have to go back. I'm all messed up here. All right, back to the pause filter. So stay with the mood. Don't try to cheer up someone that's down. Let them stay there. Or if someone is going through a difficult time and they're having a good day, have a good day with them. And always keep the emphasis on them. Don't be the focus grabber, taking it back to you at any point in time. So just in summary, what is the case for the caring leaders? We know MIT reports 81% of workers are facing some kind of burnout. We know that that's impacting work performance in a big way. We know also that that ties directly to turnover. We know that that study that was asked about is UKG. 70% of workers will say that their managers and leaders play the most critical role in their mental health, but yet most don't feel equipped to know how to navigate this tricky space, where 73% of leaders are seeking more training and support. So we have these 5 key next level innovations, which kind of goes into training skills for that. And also, I just want to leave some time for questions. So we have a 4-step process that we train. We have a series of workshops that goes with my book. We start with the discovery phase. We go into 3 main workshops: showing up, awkward zone, supportive leader. We have another one. And we certify trainers to train these as well. We have a lot of our trainers are coaches, and we've got some, they're growing throughout the United States. And I just want to say at the end, before I fix my fuzzy camera, that every day we have a choice as to whether or not we want to continue on the same path or change it. But the path we're currently on is not sustainable with all of the new trends coming our way. So we've got to raise up supportive leaders. And I hope you'll join me, and follow me on LinkedIn, email me, or you can take a screenshot of that. I think Becky will also send it to you. But I'm going to just stop sharing my screen and open it up to questions and figure out why this is
Thank you so much, Jen. If you toggle your, there it is. You did it. Amazing. I dropped her contact information. If you want to stay around for a few minutes and ask some questions, Jen, do you still have some time?
I've got a few minutes. Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. We did have some questions that came in through the chat. So I'm going to get there. We mentioned the TED Talk. And if you guys didn't see that in the chat, the link is in the chat and we will be saving that and sending that out also. Scott was wondering if there's an analysis showing suicide rates climbing dramatically after smartphones were introduced.
That wasn't a question. It was something I've seen corroborating.
Yeah. No, it's Dr. Jean Twenge is really good at that, as is Jonathan Haidt. I would encourage you to follow their data. They have a Substack account that they put stuff out almost every day, or follow them on socials. They've got all that scientific data that's showing all that.
Yeah. I didn't have a question, but I just wanted to say thank you. I think this is one of the most important things that can be worked on right now. I love the supporting care piece in the middle. In fact, it was striking me sometimes something can be toxic for us because of its presence, like verbal abuse, but sometimes it can be its absence, it's like suffocating us, the oxygen of human connection that's missing. And your presentation just kind of really drew that out. How that's supposed to, that connection piece is just, it's like we're depriving plants of sunlight and water, and we're asking, why are they withering? So thank you.
I appreciate that comment, Scott, because I think what's happened is we've allowed the 5 to 10% of really toxic, horrible people out there to have too much say over our own behaviors. And the majority of people are good, and the majority of people can be supportive and caring, and we don't have to worry so much about everybody being toxic and put it all on ourselves to figure it out and to manage everything on our own with mindfulness and meditation and go back to a toxic work environment, which will never change unless we start changing it. There's been far too much put on self. It's time that we bring organizations in to level up and create more connection within those walls.
So good. Going back to Karen, she said, clearly from your presentation, leaders have the responsibility to be a support. What responsibility do employees have to support their leaders, and what is appropriate?
Well, it's a great question, honestly. And one of the research studies we did really showed that when it comes to care, the hierarchy is really kind of broken down. Obviously, there's so many nuances that this could be a topic for a whole conversation. But very simply, if the CEO of the organization is going through a divorce or lost their mom, you would still want to send them a card and support them, right? So I think sometimes it's one of those areas that walls can be broken down, and it is an area, human suffering is the great connector. People are never more open to connection and care than when they're going through a difficult time. And so if we can navigate that space and create situations where we embrace people's challenges and help them through them together, that's what creates a really strong, loyal team. And that does break down those barriers, but a lot of nuances, which is where our training gets in.
Oh, great. Anybody else want to jump in, unmute?
May I ask a question? I asked in the chat box. That was very nice lecture. Thank you, Jen. It was wonderful. And for me as a physician, that's every day I'm facing with these challenges. And could we have a slides? I asked in the chat. Could we have a slide that could be very helpful for us, if we can? I don't know.
Yeah, we'll share some of the slides with you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so we will be emailing you out. I dropped in the chat. We'd love to get your feedback on this event, what you liked, and also if you're interested in receiving the continuing education credits, that's what dings us to process a certificate for you. So go ahead and make sure to fill that out if that's something that you're interested in and need. And otherwise, a warm thank you to Jen, for helping us to step into the awkward zone. Creating awareness that it's there and how we can step into that has been valuable. So we appreciate you joining us today. And we appreciate all of you for being on, asking great questions, and engaging in the conversation today.
Thank you
It
all.
was great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, reach out if I can be supportive or if you're interested in being certified to do this training.
And Jen, I'll just have you stay on for one more second.
Okay, fantastic. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll get your slides from you. I'll just stop this recording.